and welcome to the Creativity Conference's official podcast. My name is Aidan Rhode. I am the assistant manager here at the Creativity Conference. I'm very excited to be hosting this conference with some world-class creatives who we are lucky enough to have joining us as speakers for the Creativity Conference and to discuss all aspects of creativity. Today, I'm joined by Luisa Winters, who is an incredible drone pilot, filmmaker, musician, post-production expert and storyteller based in Maryland, USA. Luisa, how are things going at the moment with you?
Things are going very, very well. Happy New Year, everyone. And I can't complain. Things are busy the way I like them. And, we keep on working on creating new things. So, yeah.
You delivered some fantastic presentations with us for the Creativity Conference back in August 2021, both in the filmmaking side of things and the music side of things. How did you find the conference? And did you manage to attend any other sessions?
Excuse me. Fighting a cold here. Yes, I did. I found the conference refreshing, to tell you the truth. You see, most of the conferences that I speak at or attend are very technical. So they show you, how to do things. And I've always thought to myself, how to do things is interesting, but I would like to know more about what to do and why that was done. I don't need so much the technique on how to make the text animate or how to color correct the text, but the video, but why did you do it that way? And I think that is exactly what the Creativity Conference delivered. And I, for one, was thrilled of the energy and the revitalization that had in my own work and my own, desire to do better and to just go out there and create. So, yeah.
Glad to hear it. What are some, since the conference, what are some of your sort of current creative projects that you've been working on that are particularly interesting and exciting to talk about?
So inspired by the conference, I have, inspired by the work that my own presentation made me do, I have started little projects in which I incorporate more of my own music in my video work. And that has proven to be surprisingly difficult, but not because creating music is difficult for me. It's actually part of I'm always creating music, humming or whatever. But I find it difficult because it's made me now think on a more conscious level exactly what it is that I'm doing. And I find that I'm extremely picky. I'm extremely impatient with myself. And so if it's not exactly what I want, I push myself to do better and to be better. Other things that I have learned from the conference have nothing to do with my own presentation, and that have to do with photography, with the subjects. I saw some incredible presentations on not just portraits, but nature. There was this lady photographer that just took a picture of herself in the shower. I mean, no nudity, nothing like that. But it was like her handprint on the door. And I found that fascinating to no end. So I started experimenting with my own photos and doing that sort of thing. Not exactly what she did, but inspired by what she did. The music speeches that I heard, not just from popular music, but jingles, classical music, and all of that, have really not just inspired me, but have convinced me that there is not just one way of looking at things, that there is a ton of different ways of looking at those things. And I don't want to make this too long, but this is fascinating, a conversation that I had with a fellow musician. So during the conference, there was one sentence that a friend of mine said, and he said something, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, I didn't want to get formally educated in music because I wanted to remain creative. And somebody who spent most of her life, well, not now, because now I'm old, but I spent from the time I was 5 years old to the time I was 26, formally training in music, I found that comment shocking. So I was talking with a friend, musician of mine, also conservatory graduate and all of that. And she said, you know, Luisa, they're absolutely right. The way that we teach music kills creativity, absolutely kills creativity. And she said, think about when you were learning to play the violin or the piano. If you didn't play it correctly, the teacher would stop you. No, 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 do it again. No, 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 do it again. What happened to just let the child, I mean, I was 7 years old at the time, right? Let the child just play around and compose and do whatever they want. Let them explore the creativity without just going, no, it has to be exact. Da, 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 da. And if it's not exactly that, no, repeat it, do it again. No, it's wrong. And that just made me think, what are we doing? You know, as a music teacher that I am, you know, what are we doing to children? And how can I fix that in my own teaching? I don't teach children anymore, but for adults, am I killing creativity by putting too much emphasis on technique? Shouldn't technique be to the service of the art and not the other way around? So that was all due to the creativity conference. So I'm like now thinking and churning in my head, how can we convey that you can create without being technically perfect? How can we convey that not just to students, but to art lovers in general, to any artist in anything? Because I don't just create music, I create video art, I create photos, so I'm very visual like that. How do we convey that anybody can create art, even if they're not technically perfect? Anyway, I don't have the answer to that, but
no, that's something that could be discussed for hours.
For hours and hours, right? So, and I'm sorry, I took over the conversation, didn't let you talk at all, but I just found that so fascinating. And it's something that, I mean, seriously, without the creativity conference, it wouldn't even have occurred to me that somebody would say, oh no, I didn't want to take music lessons because I didn't want to kill my creativity. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's profound.
It's incredible. I mean, it really has made me do a pivotal change on how I think about what I'm doing. You know, not just music, everything. So anyway, I found that fascinating.
Well, I've I've taken that kind of to heart. That sort of personally, I want to go into the film industry. I want to make films. I always have done, but I never once have I studied it academically. I didn't choose to go to film school. I didn't choose to study it at high school, and that's for that exact reason. I didn't want it to sort of quash my own creativity when it comes to filmmaking.
Right. And I'm so glad that you brought it up in your own experience, because this is such a new concept to me, being that I am so formally overeducated, if you will, you know, that thought wouldn't even have, it didn't even cross my mind. So that's what I'm talking about. It's, you know, we're never too old to just look at things in a different way. There is not just one way of looking at things. You know, we can be creative and we can teach creativity and we can teach technique without squashing somebody else's creative desires and creative flow.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different examples as well with pretty much every academic discipline.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
it's just and film schools and music schools are becoming, in a way, somewhat redundant these days with so much out there online that is just free and easily accessible, and you know, the ubiquity of filmmaking implements and equipment, and how everything can be done on a smartphone these days. And it's like the days of formal education are waning.
Agreed. Agreed 100%. And when it comes to equipment, I'll quote my very dear, now he's passed on, but I consider him my father in music, who was my violin teacher at the Peabody Conservatory. He just said, Luisa, the difference between a $5 million violin and a $2,000 violin? And I'm like, yeah, the $5 million one costs a lot more. And he's like, no, forget the money. The more expensive violin is easier to play. You don't have to fight it to get a good sound. He says, but don't take that as an excuse. You have to be able to deliver even on a $2,000 violin. So, that made me think back then that it's never been about the equipment. And I just, I thought of that now that you mentioned, we can make videos with our phones. And, my first broadcast camera was $60,000. That's not counting the lens or the battery or the lights, And now our phone, this shoots better than that camera ever did. So it's never been about the equipment, and you're absolutely right. We have so many new ways of learning and incorporating this technique, this technology, which is ever advancing into our work, that, we no longer have the excuse of, oh, I don't have the equipment.
And with everything being online, especially the last 2 years, there's so much that is out there. How has the pandemic affected your workflow and creativity with everything being online? Have you found that you're sort of creatively stifled in some ways, but creatively enabled in others that you weren't potentially expecting?
That's a very good question. I'm not going to say that my creativity has died down or even diminished. We artists, we have to create. It's not a choice. It's not like, well, I choose to create today and tomorrow I choose not to. I'm always creating new things. I'm always thinking about what I'm going to do next. It's not a choice for me. It's something that I have to do. What the pandemic did is that it changed how I did it. So before the pandemic, I would go out and socialize with a heck of a lot more people. And if I needed to do a video, say a training video or whatever, I would go into a studio and do it there. All of that is practically, not 100%, but it's practically gone. So anything that I do, say, where I am the subject of my own video, say I'm teaching something or I'm showing a technique or whatever, I have to do it right here in my home studio. So that has changed a lot of things, because then differentiating between quote unquote work and life, those are more blurred lines, and they've always been blurred in my case because, again, it's not a choice. I have to create. I'm either humming a song, or I'm doodling something on a piece of paper, or I'm shooting something, yes, with my phone or with my drone or with my camera, or I'm doing something, But now that difference between this is my home life, this is what I create for fun, this is what I create for work, all those lines are blurred. And I'm not going to say that that's a bad thing. It's just different. So no, it has not stifled my creativity at all. Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad to hear it. And you've mentioned that you're very skilled in both the music department and the videography department. How do you manage to effectively balance these two passions in a fulfilling way, and sort of gauge which one to dedicate your time to? Because they're both very creative, but also very time-consuming fields.
Very much. So it's a very good question. And one of them had to, I'm going to use the word, I had to suffer. playing the violin, playing the piano, playing any musical instrument at the level in which I did, notice that I'm using the past tense, required a lot of hours of practice. And at my height, I would practice between 6 and 8 hours a day. And that's 6 and 8 hours a day. If you think about it, that's a full work day in which I was just practicing my instrument. And then I would go out and perform, whether it was an opera, a Broadway play, a concert, a chamber music concert, anything like that. Because I have expanded how I do my art, I can no longer spend 6 to 8 hours a day practicing my instrument. So the quality of the playing has suffered. In other words, I'm not as good as a violinist as I used to be. The whole point with this is that that's okay. It's okay that I'm not as good as I used to be. Who cares? It's I'm doing my art in a different way. What has not changed is that everything that I do, whether it's in video, in music, and yes, even photography, I follow the principles that I learned in music performance or in music creation, if you will, and I apply it throughout. In video, in storytelling, we have what is called an arc, and I'm sure you've heard of that, and we've all heard of that. Well, in music, it's the same thing. It's just not called an arc, but it's the same thing. It's an exposition. It is a development where you get conflict, you get modulations, you get, if the story starts with everybody lived happily ever after, how boring is that? There is no conflict whatsoever. So it's the same in music. And on top of that, we have the same principles. You have rhythm, you have pacing, you have this conflict, you have resolution, you have mini conflicts, mini resolutions, and then the bigger conflict, then which ends, the conflict that is, not the piece, in a big climax. And then everything just resolves itself and you have a resolution. And depending on the length of everything else, you have a coda, which is a tail, really, which in film would be called an epilogue. But it's the same thing, just using different words. But if you think about it, isn't that the basics of storytelling? That's what we're doing. We're communicating, whether it's with video, with music, with a photo, with anything. And that's all the same thing. It's just human nature to want to read, to want to experience that arc. I'm going to use the film term of arc.
And I imagine there's also some other elements of music that sort of translate over to the film side of things. I mean, there's the
Absolutely.
when you're performing in music, you have the sort of the self-discipline, and you have the composure, and that's the same as on a film set. You have to have that sort of same discipline and composure when you're on set as you do when you're performing, and the list goes on.
100%. It's a clarity of thought to communicate. If you're doing it by yourself is one thing, but if you're working with an ensemble, with an orchestra or a film crew, you have to have a clarity of thought so that you can communicate your idea to the other performers, to your crew, to get what you need. I mean, let's not forget that the orchestra conductor is the only one not making a sound.
And that's basically the director
That's right. That's right. And without that clarity of thought that the director has, and let me just give you another example. And I know I may be rambling on this, but notice the attention of detail that a musician needs to have. I played for about maybe 15 years as principal second violin of an orchestra. And this is what the principal second violin, I was concertmaster of another orchestra, but it doesn't matter. The second violin, that's what I want to talk about. I need to play my part. So I'm playing my part. I need to watch the conductor. He's the director. I need to watch the concertmaster because he is the leader of the violins, or she, right? I need to make sure that my stand partner can watch me, because whatever I do reflects in my entire section. So I have to pay attention to the conductor, the concertmaster, my stand partner, the violas, the cellos, the woodwinds, the brass, the percussion. I need to pay attention to all of those things at the same time. Otherwise, that fluidity, that whole ensemble gets lost. Isn't that what we do in set?
It's very comparable. And
It's
yeah, the
exactly
knowledge
right.
of what everybody else is doing, and that sort of symbiosis and collaborative aspect of knowing what they're doing without having to say anything.
Bingo. Because most of the communication between humans is done non-verbally. So it's body
Yes.
language, how we move, how our eyes are expressing, and all of that. To put it in a very coarse and almost vulgar, but funny way, I had a director years and years ago that would say, I'll say it in Spanish and then I'll translate. Un ojo en el plato, no, un ojo en el gato y uno en el plato. Meaning, with one eye, you watch your food, and with the other eye, you watch the cat. So it was coarse, but very effective in all of that. And it takes years, by the way, to learn. It takes years, at least, you know what? Let me rephrase that. It took me years to learn. But for somebody who is just naturally talented and just attuned to that, it doesn't have to, you know? It's just a matter of paying attention to everything that goes on around you.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to what you do outside of your music and your film, are there other occupations, not necessarily occupations, but are there other creative outlets outside of filmmaking and outside of music that keep you fulfilled creatively?
I'm always doing something, something creative. That is, I like working in little projects around the house, and building things with my hand. Either woodworking or painting something or fixing something in the garden or whatever. And of course, as you mentioned it before, I do fly my drones, but I'm going to put that into the filmmaking category, so I'm not going to discuss that. But everything, I mean, seriously, everything that I do has to be on a creative. It's not that it has to be as in it's a self-imposed thing. It's that it naturally happens because I have to do it that way. It's just the way that I'm wired, I guess. So anything that is done around the house or any projects at all involve a certain amount of creativity. And in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, how can this be done better, more fluid? Again, if everything boils down to technique, whether it's flying a drone, a hammer, a saw, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, to the service of art. Art being the end result, art being what we want, and everything else to the service of that, So, yeah, I mean, everything. But I have to say that in my spare time, I just doodle around in music, whether I take my violin or I actually have, I'll show it to you. I have it right here I can reach it and just grab it. I either grab my violin or I sit at the piano. I have one here on my right, and I just doodle and either practice, perfect scales. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, play your scales, and that's it. So keeps me busy and out of trouble.
Absolutely. And touching on drones as you did there, a bit of a
Mhm.
selfish question of mine. I
Yes.
recently, well, 2 years ago, I think, I wrote an EPQ, which is a UK thing. It's basically a shortened dissertation,
Mhm.
paper report, about drones and about commercial drones rather than
Uh-huh.
military drones, of course,
Oh, I see.
about their potential to help or hinder
Yeah.
humanity in the future. What
Yeah.
is your take on this? Do you think that there is potential either way?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like with everything, like any tool, you can use a hammer to build or to destroy. You can use, anything. It's either to build or to destroy. I guess that's human nature. We have our ability to create and create just wonderful pieces of art, and we humans also have the ability to commit the most horrendous, heinous, atrocious crimes against ourselves. So I guess it's the duality of light versus dark, good versus evil, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I think that the technology is perfect for either. And I wish I could say, oh no, you could never do harm with such things. Yes, of course you can. Of course you can. You can do harm with anything, even art. Or no, I'm going to say especially art.
Especially art.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah.
You've yes, I totally agree with you. I mean, I did a lot of research for that project and found some absolutely incredible uses of drones that I never would have thought about, such as being used to tackle pirates in the Somali Sea and being used by hospitals as defibrillators on wings
Mhm.
and all sorts of things. It was amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
I mean, search and rescue. You can predict where the levees will break after a hurricane or whatever, and therefore saving thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives. And then you can also use it to drop a bomb somewhere, or to spy hmm, I know,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Hmm.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our time here. Just a couple more questions for you, Luisa, before we
Yeah.
go. You've worked on a lot of projects over your career, in, a huge variety of facets. Are there any projects or experiences in particular that are potentially lesser known about or underappreciated that you have a bit of a soft spot for, you're particularly proud of, and that you wish more people knew about?
Uh, you know, um, uh, I guess that's always been a little, not little, a huge flaw of mine. That is, I've never craved the light, fame, to being known or whatever. That to me, even though I am a performer, but that's not my driving force. So whether people know about what I do or not, it's not of great importance to me, and maybe it should be. It's just isn't. Just like money is not a motivator. If it were, I believe you me, I would be far wealthier. Uh, but there is nothing that comes to mind in particular that I can say, I prefer this. Unless you're asking like what kind of music I prefer to perform, and I can tell you, Broadway shows are at the top.
Oh yes.
Which people think, oh no, she's going to say Mozart or Beethoven, and I'm going to say, put me in the pit playing any kind of Broadway show, and I guarantee you, I'm going to have a blast.
Yeah.
I played the show Chicago for 6 months, and that's 9 shows a week. And there are some people that do it for years. And, people started asking me, don't you get bored? I mean, you're playing the same thing 9 times a week for 6 months. Aren't you tired? I'm like, no, I would do it for 6 years. It's so much. I would have done it for free. Don't tell them, but I would have done it for free. It's that much fun. And, I hope that, anybody who is listening to this, and thank you if you are, that you can get to the point in which something that is repetitive like that is just brings in you such a huge amount of joy. You know what it's to wake up in the morning and just be happy because you know that tonight you're going to go and perform. And that's every day. And you wake up and it's just, oh, yippee, I can't wait. How many people can say that on a Monday morning going to work?
That's the dream.
Right. So, I think that those are my favorite kinds of work. So I'm not going to say, this particular video or this particular class or this particular performer or recording, because that's not necessarily it. That's not what motivates me. What motivates me is really that feeling that I'm always chasing, that feeling of I can't wait to do this. And when that project is gone, and let's face it, they all end, everything starts and everything eventually ends. I'm just looking for the next one and the next one and the next one. It's almost like just getting that creative, that need that I have to feel that I can't wait to do that particular thing.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Well, potentially one of those things could well end up being the drone sort of course that you're going to do with us in theory in Iceland in August 2022.
You know what? That thing is most definitely one of them. I've been teaching drone technology for 6 years now. And I mean either hands-on or in theory, or this is how you get this shot. And this is how you can create a mini arc with just one shot and a mini arc, conflict resolution, that sort of thing. And honestly, I can't wait to go to Iceland and try that in those beautiful, beautiful, beautiful landscapes of Iceland. I've been there before and I had a blast. And let me tell you, I was there for a week and I have probably 15 hours of raw footage of all over the wonderful, wonderful country of Iceland and all its waterfalls. I mean,
likewise.
Seriously. Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah. Can't wait.
It's superb. It's going to be brilliant. And hopefully we'll see some of you listening there as attendees. It would be fantastic to see you. Wrapping up now, Luisa, I've one question that I've asked every single person who's been on the podcast so far. It's a pretty open-ended question, potentially fairly difficult to answer concisely, but it is, what does creativity mean to you?
That is a difficult question to ask, to answer, not to ask. It's an easy question to ask.
It's an easy question to ask.
It's a difficult question to answer. What is creativity for me? Creativity is a way of life. I don't think I could live without creating. It doesn't matter what we create. We don't have to create huge things. We don't have to be Beethoven creating, 9 symphonies. We don't have to be Bach with hundreds of cantatas, and we don't have to be anyone. We just have to be ourselves, and we have to create that which makes us happy, whatever it is. So for me, because I have a need, it's not a choice. It's a need to create, and I create with everything that I do. It's really a way of life. It's nothing more and definitely nothing less than how I live. It's just creating.
That's a beautiful answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And as you say, it's an easy question to ask and a tricky one to answer, but you did so very well.
Well, thank you, Aidan.
That's about all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been wonderful to chat to you. And
thank you.
Thank you for listening if you made it this far. And hopefully we'll see you all in Iceland.
Absolutely. Hope to see everyone there. Thanks, Aidan.